introduce, first of all, Robin Ramcharan, who will be moderating this panel. And then I would like to ask Chanasara Oranop na Ayutthaya from the Graduate School of Communication Arts and Management Innovation to come behind the table and join the panel. And also I would like to invite Adam Lawrence from the British Council to take place and to present their contributions.
Thank you, Belen, and welcome back to all of you. Welcome to this panel on hate speech, religion, and racism in Thailand. Of course, we will have a variety of perspectives on this issue in relation to Thailand. So Belen has already introduced our two great, fantastic speakers. Let me kickstart things by making a brief introduction. So I should say that one of our colleagues who was supposed to join us could not make it. So please allow me to use this floor that I have for the moment to make a few introductory remarks and to present to you, to frame the panel. I would like to present to you our report that we did with the Thai Media Fund on hate speech, new forms, old rules. So if I may ask for the slides. There you have it before you. So allow me to please just introduce this topic and this report before we come to our speakers. So you will see before you, Hate Speech in Southeast Asia, New Forms, Old Rules. This is a study, again, that we did earlier this year and that we have been, it's part of our work that we've been doing with the Thai Media Fund. Okay. So, yes. So you see before you, we have documented 4 forms of hate speech. Hate speech in relation to race and religion, which is the older form. And we have also documented 3 newer forms of hate speech. Foreign national, hate speech against foreign nationals, migrant workers, refugees. Hate speech, the previous panel was precisely about this third one, political ideology and values, and hate speech vis-a-vis sexual minorities. So, as I said, the race and religion, hate speech in relation to race and religion are the older forms. You know, one can understand that for mostly post-colonial countries with multiple ethnicities and races and so on, multiple religions, that social harmony, ethnic, good relations between different ethnicities and so on were important aspects of nation building. So you saw race and religion being dealt with in a variety of ways through laws, policies, and so on. But again, we have these 3 newer forms of hate speech that have surfaced that we have to take into account. So I may mention in relation to Thailand, in relation to race and religion, it was already mentioned in the previous panel about, for example, I will call it loosely Buddhist Islamophobia, possibly, in southern Thailand. I would mention also hate speech versus the Rohingya community, for example, a Muslim community, which is a region-wide phenomenon, and it had some saliency, maybe not as deep as elsewhere, but also here in Thailand. In relation to refugees, for example, well, I come back to the Rohingya and misinformation. In relation to political ideology, obviously the conservative and liberal forces that our previous panel was talking about, the demonization of political opponents and the personal demonization. At our conference last year, we had some parliamentarians who opened the conference, and they were saying, relating how they were personally attacked and demonized. Yeah. So the personal demonization over political ideology. And the last one there, sexual minorities, prejudice, hateful language, and so on against the LGBT community. Now, in comparison to other parts of Southeast Asia, the LGBT community here in Thailand, the official approach has been, and you can please tell me if I'm wrong or if we need to improve this, but the general approach has been sort of non-committal towards the LGBT community. But yes, but not to, I'm talking about the government approach, but not to officially discriminate. But we can discuss that maybe subsequently, and please feel free to add your inputs. So here are the 4 forms of hate speech. How have they been addressed? Through harmony bills and commissions. So you see on the right side of your screen a number of commissions, harmony laws in Southeast Asia, creating a commission in Malaysia, the Protection Against Hate Speech Bill in Myanmar, the House Bill Hate Speech Act in the Philippines, and the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Bill in Singapore. You have the use of existing law, penal codes, Computer Crime Act that was mentioned, Electronic Information and Transaction Law, and you have COVID-19 related laws as well, all in some way or other seek to address hate speech. You have had a number of policies and practices across these areas, the government, so policies and practices vis-a-vis government agencies and mechanisms. Language policy for indigenous communities. So here in Thailand, if I recall correctly, for example, the promotion of minority languages, for example, indigenous communities, languages, ethnic and racial policies, LGBTI, integration activities, and so on. The key point here is, and I will come back to this later on, reiterate it later on, is that across all these areas, while we adopt all of these, we want to be careful that whatever we institute and implement is not counterproductive. Yeah, it doesn't lead to the opposite effect, and that has been the case in some places. We also look at the role of the International Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, ICERD. So you see Thailand is there a signatory since 2003. One of the issues, difficulties, problems in the region is that we have 3 important non-signatories, and so we recommended in this report that they ratify. In the case of Thailand, it's very interesting. Thailand, I think, has submitted 2 reports since 2003, even though all governments are supposed to report regularly. This has been one of the problems with ICERD. Nevertheless, the value of reporting is revealed. For example, I can tell you, Thailand submitted reports in 2011 and 2019. And as an anecdote, an example of the impact of these reports, their importance, the 2011 report for the first time listed some ethnic groups that were not officially recognized. So the 2 that are mentioned are the Lao of Isan and the Malay of Deep South. Those are 2 coming from the report. So that's the value of this process, this report, other than documenting issues, challenges, and so on. So We also look at the role of technology companies, and we flag three broad things: flagging content. This is what technology companies are doing, and we encourage them to do more. Flagging content, managing content, and suspending accounts. The technology companies, as we have said in this report, have an important role to play in addressing hate speech. In fact, they may have a critical role. Yeah. So I will just show you broadly the kinds of recommendations that we have offered. The most important, one of the most important ones is, you see on the top, broadening the definition of hate speech to include the newer forms, right? Of course, put in protective measures, amend vaguely worded laws, and ensure what is known as a three-part test. Whatever law you bring in, in the interest of protecting freedom of expression, the laws should be, necessary, legal, and proportional. Yeah. And so that's a kind of three-part, what we call the three-part test for legislation. Secondary recommendations we make in relation to the 6 areas that I mentioned before. Again, the key thing is, for example, in framing a national policy, and we do recommend governments in the region to have a national policy, perhaps more so than a specific law. A national policy in which the newer forms are recognized, and that can guide all of these areas that you see before you. So, I talked earlier about making sure that whatever you adopt does not lead to the opposite effect. So, for example, if you have, coming back to Thailand situation, if I may, well, the panel is about talent, so if you are going to, it's all fine to promote, to have multicultural youth camps, for example, as they have had in the South. But then, if you're going to have integration activities and proper integration and so on, then is it useful to collect DNA? Yeah, is it useful to track chips? And so on. That further marginalizes and demonizes that community. So I think we have to think of this holistically, and we must have it some kind of national policy, national plan, right? Even if it's soft guidelines. So please have a look at our report and the recommendations. And we recommend that the tech companies finally uphold their community standards. The tech companies have been a little bit late starters in addressing this issue, and they're having difficulty dealing with it. If I may mention Mark Zuckerberg, who was saying to the US Congress, well, please pass a law, help us, what do we do? But of course, the lawmakers are saying, if we pass a law, you won't like it, right? It may have unintended consequences on freedom of expression, and so on. So at least they could uphold their community standards, deploy adequate resources, Facebook and others, Twitter. They're deploying teams in Myanmar, in Indonesia. They're collaborating with the government to be more proactive, collaborate with the government to identify and take down hate speech. So with that said, I don't want to go on too much. I've already abused my role as moderator, but I thought it was important to try to bring some larger context. And so let me turn the floor now to Ajahn Chanasara.
Thank you, Robin, for a kind introduction and good presentation to give us context about the hate speech in Asia. We are, both of us will be like talking about the old form of hate speech according to the studies, but I'm sure that we are presenting the new data and new information and updates about the situation in Thailand as well. For me, I'm delighted to share with you the research finding that my colleagues and I did last year. May I mention my friends, Ekarin Tuansiri, a lecturer from Prince of Songkhla University, and Chanchai Chaisukoson, a founder of Co-Joy, an organization to recover human connection and self-alignment with joy and resilience. We use social listening tools to explore how online media users respond to events relating to the relationship between Buddhist and Muslim in Thailand during 2015 to 2019. Oops, sorry.
We'll just resolve issues with Flickr.
Okay, good. This project is financially supported by UNDP Thailand in response to its mission on preventing violence, extremism, or PVE. Also, we have worked with the Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn Anthropology Center. The background of the research is from the previous research, which found that the form of hate speech in Thailand was mainly directed at those people holding different political views, as the panelists mentioned in the morning session. The problem occurred for decades, and especially the political unrest in 2006, when broadcasting media at national and regional level, together with online media, were employed to propagate and spread the hatred to other group of people. Next slide, please. But my focus is on another form of hate speech in Thailand, which is about hate speech directed to religious groups in the southern part of Thailand, which has occurred since 2004 until now. The study focused on this problem because the insurgency in the south has been ongoing. Also, we have noticed that the relationship between Buddhists and Muslims affected by the propagation of hate speech, especially online. As a result, the negative attitude, fear, and discrimination among Buddhists and Muslims is widespread to other parts of the country right now. There are a number of online communities on like Facebook page with strong and extreme belief to against the other group of people with different religions, namely Buddhist and Muslim. We notice an increasing trend of religious extremists and a decrease of tolerance among Thai online media users who interacting with these online communities and other platforms as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this brings us to the study with the objective to examine online conversation, which are considered as hate speech, about the relationship between those two groups of religious belief in southern border provinces and other areas among Thai social media users during 2015 to 2019. And this research is focused on online social data relating to the 6 events that we select from all 6 events happened during the 2015 to 2019. Let me explain more about the events that were selected. We divided into 3 groups. The local level, we have 2 incidents. The first one is killing monks and also Islamic leaders at the southern border province. And the second one is hijab ban at Pattani school. And the events that national level includes anti-masjid movement in the north and the northeast Thailand. Also, together with the community protest against building haram industrial estate in Chiang Mai, and also anger aroused by news at the Yala hospital, provide only halal food for every patient, regardless Buddhist or Muslim. This incident is at national level. Last but not least, at the international level, we select Brunei's anti-LGBT Sharia law, which gay sex and adultery can result in death by stoning, together with Christchurch mosque shootings in New Zealand. These 6 events, we collect all data online. Next slide, please. And use the social listening tools from tech companies called Sandru Corporation, one of our partners. These two collected and analyzed online data of social media platforms, including Facebook public page, Twitter, Pantip web board, and 27 of Thai language-based Buddhist and Muslim community. And only text-based data were included. Let me explain a little bit more about the 4 categories of data in this study. The data divided into 4 categories. The first one is message in the topic posted by the account owner at admin page. The second one, message in reply when the admin page reply to their followers. The third one is message in comment, where online media users or followers having conversation and interaction with each other. Lastly, engagement, which was the number of like, share, and comment. So this is the framework that we use to analyze the social data are considered as hate speech or not. We have a divide the hate speech according to their intensities. This is the 4 escalating steps on intensity of hate speech. The first one is the low level, the lowest level, includes intense dislike, us and them discrimination, stereotyping, or labeling, as we mentioned earlier in the previous panel, like Salim, or kind of labeling some group of people. And the second level, blaming, condemning, and dehumanization or demonization. And the third one is denial of living together. And the fourth, or the highest rank of intensity of hate speech, is deliberate incitement of discriminatory violence. To be clear, I'm not suggesting to use this framework to define hate speech in order to regulate by law, but just only to analyze them, to understand more about the situation. Because if the wider definition of hate speech, the narrower space of free speech, I believe that. So this framework just for the analyzed in the study. Yes, and we worked for 6 months in analyzing the data. The findings were partly summarized as follows. First one, most of the online hate speech of all events relating to Buddhist and Muslim relation was in a low level. That is the first level and the second level. So it's quite low, referring to creating stereotype and blaming, condemning, indignity the other. Moreover, it was found that after events relating to physical violence, such as killing monks in Narathiwat province or Christchurch mosque shootings, the hate speech intensity level was increased to a high level, the highest level, or to be called a dangerous speech, which would incite others to break the law and eradicate by using violence to the other group. So this main finding. And another finding is that in the research, if you see on your left hand side, the green one is the first group of the events that more people were interested in, like killing monks or Islamic leaders, hijab ban, and anti-LGBT Sharia law. You see the number of conversation is very high. On the contrary, the number of hate speech is quite low. But on your right-hand side, there are only few people interacting and have conversation with these 3 incidents. On the contrary, the number of hate speech is quite high. You may see the difference. Next slide, please. The reason behind that slide can be explained that the small number of people could create a few different opinions when they were on the platform, especially community page, where like-minded people were together. It was like a safe zone for them to express their negative feeling, their hate. The conversation tends to be in the same direction and reinforce their own beliefs and behavior, which is known as an echo chamber effect, which happened in this studies as well. Come to the recommendation lastly. As the result shows that the intensity of hate speech about the situation is mostly at the low level. So we recommend that employing an informative approach to prevent people passing on or sharing hate speech is more appropriate than regulating by legal measures. Even if we are sitting in a faculty of law, but I suggest that the regulating by law is not essential at this stage for the low level of hate speech intensity. Some of information approach that we have selected to recommend is that creating cultural norm in the society to show that hate speech is not accepted and should be ignored, should not be ignored. By doing this, we recommend to engage influencer in the related community page. I will show you the next slide for this influencer. It might a small. Okay, you see these two squares label local case and national case, and you see the blue circle. This is an influencer in the community page relating to Buddhist and Muslim relationship. On the x-axis is positive, positive topic, and on the y-axis is a negative comment. Okay, I will explain you. The common finding that the local case and international case, number one influencer who have the most number of followers, the blue one, commonly post a positive topic. Their caption was not arouse any hatred or discrimination. However, the followers likely to have a conversation in negative way and express their hatred towards the other groups relating to the post. So it not depends on the admin page. Whatever he said or whatever she said, the followers will think or express their negative feelings, by the way. And for national case, there is no Facebook community page with their follower comment positively. And for local case, it was found that one community page that their followers comment more positively. At this page have its follower at the first rank, the orange one. So that's my recommendation, that in the solution is to try to engage those influencers which have the higher number of the followers to kind of moderate content in their page, in their platform. Yeah, to be like more intervention, some kind of intervention, not just delete or block the free speech, but try to moderate the content to be more creative and less hated. Last but not least, we have come up with the other two recommendations. The first one is similar to the previous panel. Try to encourage online users to have the digital literacy and create more awareness of human values. For example, solidarity, tolerance to difference, diversity, digital empathy. Yeah, we believe that it might reduce online conversation, inciting hatred to others. And last but not least, monitor the severity and exploitation of social media by those religious extremists to prevent the violence, because the database will be helpful to create solution and prediction. Also, because database you can be predict from the data that the event will be happen or not, or you can prevent it before it happens. Yeah, that's all for my presentation, and looking forward for your suggestion and discussion.
Thank you, Chanasara. So let's move, unless there are some questions or comments.
Yeah, we work very hard to find these keywords because before we use the social listening tool, we need to gather all related keywords to put into the program. So first we talk with the people in the community to identify which keywords that were used in that platform that indicated to hate speech in each level. So there are just around 400 keywords. Yes, I included in my study. Mhm.
Interested in the influencer. What do you mean by influencer? Uh, is are they what we call opinion leaders, or the local administrators, or the leaders of the religion, or which one, please?
For my presentation, I mean influencer in online platform like Facebook page admin or the account that have their followers in a high number. Yeah, so this page will be gather all followers who have tended to be similar attitudes and similar feelings about the situation. So I think the role of this influence will be necessary for the moderate the content. And we have another recommendation for the leadership, for the leaders in religious institution as well, but I'm not here in a presentation because we think that when we talk about the relationship between two religions, the leader of the religion should be like negotiate or make some commitment in some way to prevent or monitor this kind of hate speech online before it leading to the physical violence.
Thank you for your presentation. I just was wondering about the case that you talk about killing monks, the deliberate incitement case. I didn't follow the story, I mean, from newspaper. Would you tell us what happened after the incitement or anything that like hate speech being used against them? What happens after that?
Actually, there were a series of killings on and on. Like Islamic leaderships were killed, and also the monks were killed in the southern part of Thailand. But when the Islamic leaders were killed, yeah, the Buddhism tried to blame for the Muslim people and for for blame for Buddhists. On the other side, when monks were killed, the Muslim were blamed for that cause. Yeah, so on and on.
Maybe I could just throw in a small innocent question. From your research, could you can we extrapolate and make more general, let's say, generalize about the situation in Thailand as a whole in relation to hate speech on religious grounds against either the southern communities or? Oh, sorry.
Okay. I think from my research is explore the relationship between two different group of people that belongs to different religions that have conversation online, that they cannot interact face to face. So this sphere bring more hatred because, like I said in the presentation, that the echo chamber effect have happened in this small group of people which have similar negative feelings or negative effect. So this quite a very important issues and critical issues that we have to discuss more on how to encourage them to expose more different point of views and how to moderate content in each of the page or the community groups.
Yes.
Is there any chances that the problem is not only about religion, but also about ethnicity between Melayu and Siam? Because I've met a Grab driver that is Melayu and he asked me where I'm come from, and I asked I'm from Indonesia, and then he asked me that, oh, I'm just like you, Sandy. I'm from Melayu, but the Siam forces us to join or to integrate with their culture, something like that. So is there any chances that the problem is actually not merely about religion, but also about the clash between Melayu as a minority and Siam as a majority in Thailand? Thank you.
Thank you for raising these comments. I agree with you. Actually, the problems in the south of Thailand is quite complicated. It's not just only for the religion issues, but also ethnic. And that's because the insurgencies in the south of Thailand for the extremists, for the soldier, so they're kind of political as well. So maybe I think the south of Thailand problems is very complicated. So we cannot talk standalone for the religion.
Thank you. I just was wondering about the words that they use. Well, we just mentioned it, not using it. Can you just give me an example?
I understand the feeling of the panelists or the previous panel, because in our keywords is Thai, and we categorize into 4 levels, as you have it curious to know the, how to say, the one group is kind of the label that has been used among groups of people. For example, they call Muslim like Musi, or Allah, something like that. So it's kind of a little word, a short word, but they label this group of people. And for the fourth, the highest rank of intensity, like we have to eradicate them or get rid of get rid of them out of Thailand, for example, or shoot them and kill them all and bomb them, something like that. Yeah, that's phrases that were used actually in the community page. Like พวกพุทธอะไรอย่างเงี้ย the radical Buddhism in Thai, the radical Buddhism, the extremist Buddhism.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Maybe we'll turn to Adam now for Adam, while we wait for the technical stuff, maybe you could just give a brief glimpse, title of your talk, and
Yes, indeed. Well, first and foremost, I'm sorry if I just had to. I've never used one of these before. I should have probably sat down and learned how to use a microphone before sitting behind you. Oh my God, there we go. Hello there. My name is Adam Lawrence. I dabble in academic research. By trade, I am an English teacher and a teacher trainer for the British Council. In 2017, I was given a lovely opportunity to observe the teaching practice of over 300 Royal Thai government language instructors. It was a lot of fun, and it inspired all of the research which I have done since then. For the record, I would like to say that my views and opinions are my own. I'm here representing myself, and I do not represent the British Council today, so I'm not a reflection of the British Council. I don't want to make my boss angry. One of the objectives of this conference is to examine non-legal measures by which social cohesion can be brought about. And so I would like to speak to you today about hate speech in education in Thailand. Perhaps more specifically, I would like to speak to you about the analysis of learner needs and what is effectively the antithesis of learner needs, which I will be referring to as passive hate speech. So hate speech, of course, does nothing for social cohesion. I don't think that's a great revelation to anyone. But passive hate speech is something that I argue we're all, at times, perhaps somewhat guilty of. So if I can direct your attention to the screen. Oh, there we go. So one academic, Alexander Brown, has provided us with a very detailed study of hate speech and argued that it can be broken down into multiple definitions. Now, Alexander argues that the strength of hate speech as a term is precisely that it can accommodate many different meanings. Of course, we're here in the Faculty of Law. That's not an accident. The term hate speech began as a legal term, but what Brown argues is that the term hate speech has kind of broken free of its legal chains and has been accepted, or perhaps adopted, in society, in many societies throughout the world, in fact. And so, as we've seen with various other panelists earlier, there has been discussion about different ways that hate speech has been interpreted in Thailand alone. So I would like to engage in some discourse analysis. It's audience participation time. So what do we apply the term hate speech to? And why do we apply it? Is all lives matter an example of hate speech, for example? Let's just have a show of hands. Who here believes all lives matter to be an example of hate speech? And who here believes all lives matter to be an example of racism? Okay, interesting. All right. I wasn't anticipating that people might just be really shy to show their hands. One of the reasons why all lives matter, as opposed to Black Lives Matter, is considered to be extremely offensive by some people, at least, is that it's the idea of colorblindness. It's seen as promoting an ideology of colorblindness. The idea that I don't see race, I don't see the difference in the opportunities which are afforded to people of different races. And this, of course, is a contentious issue to discuss. It's quite difficult to discuss with a number of people if you have any American friends, especially as there's a chance of things getting fiery pretty quickly. But what really interested me there was a backlash against Thai celebrities who support Black Lives Matter online. One Twitter user said that when it comes to injustice in your own country, you are completely silent. When it comes to injustice in a foreign country, you're all pretentiously posting. And I would like to draw your attention to this, to completely silent. This idea of silence, the people who were criticizing Thai celebrities asked, and I think quite legitimately, why it is that Wanchalam Saksit and racial issues in general were not being openly discussed amongst Thai celebrities, why it is really more a case of Black Lives Matter, something that's outside of Thailand. And that brings us to this. Moments of Silence is a book. It was written by Professor Thongchai Wichinakun. It was released very recently, in fact. It was released in July of this year. And it is about the Thammasat massacre on the 6th of October, 1976. So again, appropriate that we happen to be sitting so close to the memorial today. And, you know, we walked past it on the way in. Thongchai has argued that for over 30 years, the subject of the university massacre here at Thammasat resided precisely here, in silence. Nothing was said about it, at least publicly. It became something that was openly kind of suppressed for a long time. And even my use of the term suppression here is kind of a subject for debate. But there are other things that have been stuck in silence for a very long time. In the 1980s, around the time that the term hate speech originated, the term systemic racism also resided largely here, in the blank space, in silence. Likewise, journals today, a number of journals still refuse to use the term silence. I think they're quite happy to use the term silence. They'll still avoid using the term systemic racism. The Tatmadaw, the Myanmar military, has long used silence as a form of military oppression. And more generally, of course, silence is considered to be antithetical to justice. And it's interesting, Supinya mentioned earlier that the massacre in Thammasat University is even today referred to as an incident rather than as a massacre. And some of you might be thinking, well, okay, why is there a man here speaking to us about speechlessness, a lack of speech, at a hate speech conference? And what I'm arguing today is that silence is potentially, at least, the result of hate speech. If you leave hate speech to develop and mature like a cheese or a fine wine, what you end up with is this, is silence. If everyone knows, if it is obvious that the sky is blue, if it's obvious that a particular race of people are inferior to you, there is no need to talk about it. It is perfectly logical for it to become silent, as I will carry on arguing. So let's analyze the term hate speech. Oh no, what a terrible time for the clicker to stop working. There we go. So, speech. Let's have a look at the speech side of things. Click, please. In discourse analysis, speech is naturally occurring. So as opposed to just artificial invented examples of speech, in discourse analysis, we're specifically concerned with, say, for example, the kind of speech that perhaps your conversation over breakfast this morning entailed. And likewise, we're also concerned with broad patterns of speech. So we're less concerned about what one person is saying than what many people are saying. And rather than looking at something in particular, something very specific, we might be looking at a particular trend in language which appears in a number of different places. And this presents us, of course, with a data collection issue. There is a fascinating example recently of some they were police body cameras. Someone extracted the audio recordings from American police body cameras, legally, by the way, and they were able to analyze an extraordinarily large corpus of speech. But of course, generally, this is a data collection issue. We can't, of course, go around recording people while they're having breakfast. Unfortunately, at least at the moment, that's not happening. But what discourse analysis enables us to do is make guesses, really. I mean, we'll call them hypotheses to make it sound nice, but really what we're talking about here is guesswork. We're talking about informed guesses. We adhere to a particular theoretical framework, and we make guesses about the implications of speech. Now, when we attach the word hate, things of course get more complicated. Are we talking about the speaker? If we're talking about a particular hate speech event, are we saying that it is hate speech if the speaker is a hateful human being and the speaker openly wishes to convey hate? Or is it more about the listener and whether the listener is offended by hate speech? If my sister calls me a lemon and I'm offended, is it hate speech? I provide you with a ridiculous example because I would like to say, obviously, no, but there are murkier examples. And finally, and this is where things get really murky, what if there is impact without intent? What if there is what if there are hateful patterns of speech which cause issues? So what we might say, we might describe this as ambiguous racism. It has been referred to by other theorists as racism 2.0. It's been referred to as micro-level racialization. I particularly like the example of bad code. We are concerned, of course, here simply with hateful patterns of language. And so if the language itself, rather than the person speaking or the person listening, if there is an issue with the language itself, then what do you do? What I'm suggesting here is that perhaps the metaphor of an error on a computer would be useful. If you see an error message on your computer, you don't destroy the computer, and you're probably not going to call up the programmer of the particular program you're using and say, you know, you failed at life, you're a terrible programmer. You are far more likely to call a technician. You are likely to call them in and try to diagnose the problem and then fix it, and then, of course, carry on with your life. And it is for this style of hate speech, this version of hate speech, perhaps, that I would like to suggest a term. I would like to suggest passive hate speech, an insidious form of hate speech which is pervasive, which can exist in many different places, which can exist amongst us, indeed. So let's look at a particular issue which we can apply this idea to. here we're looking at educational obstacles for migrant learners in northern Thailand. If you look at the figure on the left, you'll notice that just after kindergarten or grade 1, what's known as Anuban, Pathom Nun, the graph begins to steadily decrease, slope down. And this, of course, indicates with each successive year that there are less and less migrant learners in education. If you see around Pathom Hok, grade 6, there is suddenly a fairly steep decline, and that is because that is around the time that learners transition from primary to secondary education. This was identified as a particular issue by Dr. Nongyao Nawarat, who works at Chiang Mai University. And the figure on the right is a little bit newer, but it's kind of a surreal figure. It essentially shows us that over half of, or it's predicted on very limited data, that over half of the migrant children in Thailand are currently out of school. And this is no joke, of course. If you are only if you can only do unskilled work, and if you do not have Thai citizenship, there are very few options available to you. Hard labor, working on a farm, sex work. There are not that many options available. And so the crucial question here is, what are the barriers to education for migrants? Why is it that they drop out so early? What are migrants' needs? What are their learning needs? So here I have introduced, if I direct you over to the slide, I've introduced another term into the mix. I've introduced I've introduced COVID-19 into the mix. And what we end up with is a complete mess, frankly. So what I would like to do is to try to make sense of these terms and how they can be related to one another. So let's just begin by looking on the left side and combining equal representation and hate speech together to create passive hate speech. So, passive hate speech, I'm arguing, can be found in the United States, in Thailand, in many other different places. One prominent example, of course, is All Lives Matter. All Lives Matter, on the one hand, might suggest equality. Indeed, when it's decontextualized, it does suggest equality. And, oh, it works, you just smack it. It can also suggest indifference, of course, and this is one of the reasons why people who adhere to the All Lives Matter movement are so heavily criticized. And it can also divert our attention away. So if I say all lives matter, or in this particular case, all migrant lives matter, we still don't have any real specifics. Who do you mean? It's a very general statement. So the more general it is, the more diversion there is. What we need to have is something really specific. We would like to know specifically what migrant learner needs are. Here, there is essentially a crossover that I'm showing between learner needs and silence. Passive hate speech, I'm suggesting, is a way of generalizing. And so within a classroom, if the teachers are if teachers are not analyzing learner needs, what this creates is a kind of silent space. If migrant learners have specific difficulties that Thai learners do not necessarily have, then that information doesn't find its way outside of the classroom. And that's why there is an intersection here between learner needs and silence. What I would like to argue is that another example of passive hate speech is what over here I'm calling no differences. If we do not distinguish between our learners, then our learners are effectively faceless, silent, and invisible. So this, in discourse analysis, is it can look pretty weird. Here's an example. When I interviewed a number of Thai teachers and school directors for my MA in Education and International Development, I found something interesting. The most common thing that people spoke about actually were differences, the many differences between learners. But the one specific thing that they spoke about most was that there are no differences between learners, which is rather odd. Let me just see if I can get this thing working just a moment. Yes, would you mind just clicking through? There we go. So those are the many differences between learners. And then the most common trend on the far left, click please, is no differences. And this is really confusing when if teachers are telling you about all these differences and they say, and there are no differences between the learners, then of course, you know, how do you interpret that? To return to the, sorry, to go forward to the next slide, sorry. There we go. To return to the kind of uncluttering process, forward please. We can have a look at a catalyst. I Can't Breathe is probably a relatable catalyst for this year. It's perhaps a crass example of a catalyst, but certainly when George Floyd died earlier on the hands of the American police, it certainly broke silence. It was it caused an enormous amount of protest, really, in various different countries. So let's now look at what happens when the silence is broken. Forward, please. Previously, on the left-hand side, I'm looking at something which can happen in virtually any school system anywhere in the world. If I'm saying, oh, all of my learners are important, or there are no differences between my learners, that's going to cause problems in any particular school system. On the right, I am looking specifically at the case of Thailand. So, and now we're thinking specifically about the learning needs of migrants, and we are thinking specifically about silence as it pertains to Thai education. And you might be wondering what these obscure terms at the top of the screen are. On the left, we have morphostasis, and on the right, we have morphogenesis. This betrays the conceptual framework upon which all of this research is based. I don't have time to go into it now, but it is based upon the work of Pierpaolo Donati and Margaret Archer. If you Google relational sociology or the morphogenetic approach, you'll be able to find out more information about it. In a nutshell, the belief with this particular social philosophy of social science is that social reality can only really be explained by identifying causal powers. So in this particular case, I am attempting to identify the causal power which produces Thai silence, which I'm saying is a particularly insidious form of hate speech which permeates society generally. Now, what happens when we introduce COVID-19 into the mix? What happens in the crossover between these three things? What happens when schools close? Now, this next slide is, I think, probably the slide to rule them all if you forget absolutely everything about what I've spoken about today. This slide is probably the one you want to pay attention to. My hypothesis is that on the left, passive hate speech produces silence, and that then precludes needs analysis in schools. If it is acceptable to say that all of your learners have exactly the same needs, then in effect you've produced silence. We're not learning anything about them, and so it's fairly difficult to teach them. On the right-hand side, we have what happened when COVID-19 came into the mix. And I would just like to say that, of course, COVID-19 is an awful thing to have happened. But in this particular case, it does appear to have done something good, or at least it might indicate something quite positive. School closures in Thailand prompted direct community intervention. Educational area service offices needed to send their school supervisors to visit particular places to find out about the learners who they wanted to reach out to. When schools closed, things do appear to have really changed for a while. Let's have a look at some specific examples from the transcripts. On the left, this is before COVID-19. One Chiang Rai school director said they are come to study here when they are little, just before primary, so they're able to speak and listen and know Thai language, and there is nothing else they want to study. Their needs are all the same. Yet another school director said, nowadays I see them as human, and they are equal, and so we have to develop our thinking. And by the way, when he said that we have to develop our thinking, I don't think that he was being insincere. I think that the people who work for the ministry who I spoke to were very sincere and honest with me, and I'm extremely grateful to them for it. I think it's more that when we develop our thinking, we're not necessarily quite sure how to do it. But for the time being, we're just acknowledging that all children are human. And I think we can probably go a bit further. And finally, one particular Chiang Rai primary teacher, still on the left, said, as a teacher, I call the migrant learners as my students, just like Thai learners, and I will do anything to support them to get Thai citizenship. This is really important. Thai teachers are frequently criticized, and it's often forgotten how much they do to try and help their students get Thai citizenship. One particular teacher sat in government offices with one of her students for 8 years to try and help that student get Thai citizenship. The Thai student was denied citizenship and left Thailand. We do not know where that child is today. She said, we do anything to support them to get Thai citizenship, but it depends on the rules, it depends on the times. If they live here not long enough, like that, and the hand gesture over there was, they disappear, they go. On the right-hand side, this is after COVID-19, speaking to one Chiang Rai primary school supervisor. He said, the Ministry of Education is offering online learning as a solution, but look at school contexts in my area. We have to work hard trying to find ways to fit in with this context. Suddenly, after COVID, the schools were closed. It wasn't about just delivering content anymore. They needed to find out who they were designing courses for. And I think that these abilities were always there. I think there was always a capacity to conduct social research in order to improve education in Thailand. To the next, please. Can we go back one? One Chiang Rai secondary school supervisor said, if it's good for our community, if it's good for our people, it's really good for us also. If the result will be not a good thing, then we need to stop doing it. Again, a results-based approach. We send out the questionnaires to get information about the numbers of students, the supporters from the support from the school that they need, and online learning access, whether they have the television, how many mobile phones, how can they get access to internet connections, and the number of the students in their families. a lot of research was done when schools closed. When schools closed, things appear to have gotten decentralized, and the education service area offices were relied upon a lot more to gather information. So I'd like to speak now about some of the implications of this research. One of the implications is that face-saving culture is not an insurmountable barrier to education. Thailand generally follows a perennialist understanding of education, which is both openly hierarchical and it reinforces strong hierarchies. And this is often pitted against decentralization, where, of course, there are kind of many small hierarchies and less of a centralized system. Mark Crawford from PIAP University said recently that Thai cultural responses to major crises are often rooted in practicality. And it's interesting because he said that in 2019, and he said that he was interested in what would happen if the Thai education system were to confront an existential crisis. And incredibly, he effectively predicted that COVID-19 would happen. And this will probably come as no surprise to any of the Thai people in this room, but it might be something worth remembering for foreigners who live in Thailand. That Thai people produce Thai culture. One of my own personal pet hates is that frequently Thai people are spoken about as if somehow they are slaves to their culture alone and are unable to produce it. And the evidence, I think, clearly shows that during times of crisis, the Thai education system is very much able to respond to crises. They are actually very practical in how they go about their work. Another implication is more general, which is that nobody has the answers for establishing learner needs. I think that the social research which the school supervisors did was really great, especially considering how little time they had to prepare. But even in Europe, the OECD is still discussing what best practice means. ILSA stands for International Large-Scale Assessments. There is still a big debate between whether the schools should be more focused on completing large-scale assessments or whether they should be focusing more on the specific needs of their learners. Another implication is that learner-centered education, or LCE alone, is really unlikely to be the answer. It's not okay for international non-governmental organizations to approach Thai educators and say, what you need is more accountability and learner-centered education, and then just walk away. Actually, you do need to talk about precisely how it is that teachers are supposed to gather information in the limited time frame that they have available sometimes. In closing, I think that if endemic racism is kind of coded into everyday interactions between people, then it is appropriate that All Lives Matter has begun to receive quite a lot of international media attention, because we need a term for issues like that. We would need a term for bad code, what I'm proposing as passive hate speech. And finally, I think another important implication is that Thai educators are frequently criticized, but they are very rarely actually listened to, especially teachers. And Thailand is not short of teachers. There are quite a few of them around. My own personal view is that teaching should be recognized as a form of social research, far more investment should be put towards ensuring that teachers have the tools they need to gather the information they need about their learners. And this is really something that even within schools is not really yet a discussion that we're having. This comes down largely to assessment, to the importance of assessment. It's a very complicated subject and one which I think deserves much greater attention, not just in Thailand, but everywhere, frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. So, in the remaining 5 minutes, let me
Oh, good Lord.
open it. Any questions? Yes.
So we actually have a question from the online participant.
Okay.
It's quite a long one.
Okay.
So the discussion reminds me of Ibram X. Kendai's idea that there's no such thing as not racist. If you keep silence, then you are not racist by supporting the status quo. So passive hate speech is like that. Even if you don't say much, it doesn't follow that you are not creating hate speech, because you may be passively supporting hate speech in some sense.
Quite possibly. I'd like to return to something that was said earlier. We discussed for a little while I think in the first panel, kind of soft, non-aggressive language and how that can kind of culminate into something dangerous. And I think one of the reasons why the term passive hate speech is useful is because it enables us to have a little bit of wiggle room in what we consider hate speech is passive, and if it's not intended necessarily, then it also enables us to use it to really reflect upon ourselves and how we use, how we use our own language. I think it is entirely possible that in everyday life, there are particular biases that we demonstrate, and they may cause harm to other people in the long run. It's kind of like, unfortunately, kind of gets into the whole butterfly effect thing. It's still, I think, a discussion which needs to be had as to how we can identify passive hate speech, what people are invited to reflect upon themselves without necessarily insulting people or saying that they are racist or bad. This particular kind of murky area of hate speech, I think, is something which deserves to be explored. I don't know if that answers the question. I hope it does.
And if I may, I'm curious, as you were listening to that.
I think, Adam, you have to
Oh,
turn off your
I'm ever
microphone.
so sorry. I still haven't learned. What do I press?
Yeah. So thank you. As you were listening to Adam, any thoughts how this passive hate speech concept may apply to your research? Oh, sorry.
Okay, it's very interesting concept of passive hate speech, because it's opened the floor for us to think creatively how to kind of release our feelings without insulting others, right? Am I right? Yeah, the passive hate speech. Yeah, I think the foundation of producing passive hate speech or can create passive hate speech is the feelings of the empathy. Yeah, and my personal view, because if we don't have the empathy, both of online or offline, we cannot make an atmosphere of the releasing our hate, but not insulting or dignifying others. Yeah, that's my personal view, and I think it can be applied in each situation or any form of hate speech. We have to look at the foundation to create the empathy.
Well, that brings up the recommendation of creating a cultural norm. Maybe a norm rooted in this idea. Any yes, please.
Thank you for your talk. I'm interested in the concept of silence. Well, I'm working on also on this concept, but it's mainly on the way that it's Jennifer Hornsby, you know, it's a feminist philosopher. And what she said is something to do with, you know, there is a shades or degrees of hate speech, you know, like for the red shirt or for the English language, like when you use the term slut for the women, you can't find the counter speech that has an equal offensiveness.
Right.
I don't know, like the word honky is, can it be equal offensive?
If someone was calling me a honky, I wouldn't be insulted, I would be confused.
Yeah, but it's yeah, but that shows that there is a difference here. It's something to do with you know, the power relation within the society, because women seems to be like inferior to, you know, the patriarchy society. So and what I'm wondering about your talk is this: when you said that passive hate speech can silence, you know, can cause speechlessness. But is it true? Because there is something like appropriation, reclamation of the, you know, of the derogatory terms or slurs. So this is not really silencing, right? People just can find words to, you know, to counter the speech. So I don't know what you think about this.
Could you state what you think?
Oh, good Lord. Okay, so when I was researching, doing my research for this, I found that the concept of silence was particularly prominent in sociolinguistics and also in feminist literature as well. It's often referred to as repression of speech, but the dynamics by which speech is repressed and in feminist theory is, I think, something that I can't comment upon in detail. All I can say is there was a lot of it. I was pretty confused, and this is a question that I would like to explore myself. I hope I got my 30 seconds.
Very good. Yes, please.
Mm. Yes. Sure. Mm. 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 Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that one of the complicated things about silence, precisely one of the reasons why I think it is able to perpetrate, able to represent injustice so effectively, is precisely because it has so many different meanings. You know, you're looking into your lover's eyes, you might be silent. People aren't necessarily going to get all up in arms about it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your comments and questions.